Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 127 for December 15th. I believe, let's see, this is the last one of the year. We'll resume again in the new year. We'll talk about that in a bit, but let's see. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App, joined by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plantain App, and then several of our clients on board as well. So welcome to the regulars. This is an event that we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time, and it's an opportunity for us to get together and talk about Plantain App and the way that you code with it. And so it's just an all skill levels welcome, whether you're a beginner or advanced. We're happy that you're here or will join us. We record all these, put them out on YouTube, so youtube.com/plantainapp. We run this agenda every week. We start with introductions, anybody new to the group, and we say hello. And then after that, we do first call. And sometimes we don't get beyond that, but if we do, we'll talk about either contributions to the Campfire website, which I have one that I'm wrapping up right now, or things that are going on our community website. After an hour or so, we turn off the recording, go into Afterglow, where we'll talk about, well, whatever you want to talk about, raise a virtual eggnog and enjoy chatting for a few minutes. So do engage with us. Jump in, show and tell. You can show your screen. You can do most anything, but if you've got noise going on behind you, please mute. You can submit questions or topics or comments in advance. Use that QR code or the links that we send in the emails to you. As I mentioned, our holiday schedule, December 22, December 29, we're going to cancel Low Code Campfire. I don't know how many of you would have showed up anyway, but I'm not going to be here. We are going to go forward with an end of year episode for Low Code Cafe that will be live on December 20th, this same hour, and it'll be out on recording as well. So if you happen to miss it, there'll be an opportunity to do that. We're going to cover a little bit of retrospective, where we've been this year and where we're going, some plans for some roadmap. You'll hear from Bogdan. And so I think it ought to be an interesting episode. So with that, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
They looked at me and said that thing about sometimes we don't get past first call.
Good morning. Sorry, I have to find the unmute button.
Welcome, welcome. It really was not aimed at anybody.
I know.
Here
But
we
I
go.
seem to have a knack for that. I'm sorry, but on
Well,
that note, I don't have anything new, so there won't. I hope I'm not going to take up much time. But I just wanted to share with you that the thing that ended up taking up so much time, talking back and forth about deciding if it's time to fire off something. I did that right after the last meeting and worked just great. And it was all thanks to using a tiny bit of Razor script to find out what the system time was and split it up into the month name and the date, the day number. So
Yeah.
if the thing had to fire off on March 1st, then I just have a block that has a conditional line in it that says if the value in the record is equal to current month, and the value in the same record, the other value is equal to the current day, then do this thing.
Very good. Well, that's a perfect example of how, you can reach out and drop a topic in the middle and we can chew on it for 45 minutes, but it does add value, I think, to not only to you, but to the people that show up, the people that listen to the call afterwards. I know we have several that can't attend, but do follow up with the recording. So very cool. So did anybody bring a first call today?
We're going to let you get to your prepared stuff.
All right, I'm going to go right to that. We had, let's see, I had put most of a contribution together, and I'm on the final steps of it, but it's this thing that if you're querying from SQL and you want to use an in clause so that you can specify a list of things that, and actually this is kind of the old format. So you have a list of things that are perhaps comma delimited or quote comma delimited, and you want to run some use that SQL to extract certain records. We're heading to a time when, excuse me, this format that I've highlighted here is subject to SQL injection. If you don't have good control over what's in my list, everything that's in my list is going to go and be presented to SQL to execute. If you don't have good control over it, you could get somebody trying to inject SQL on you on your website. So we'd like to do it in a more controlled way, and we're going to a time while in some cases we support this type of syntax where you can put a list together and put it into my list. In some cases we already don't support this, and we're headed towards not supporting doing it this way, just to prevent people from not understanding SQL injection and getting it to happen. So in any case, the better syntax is something like this, where you pass in the IDs as a bind token and then use string split to split it up. And I just wanted to have this preferred syntax out available in our contributions list as an example. And I'm open if anyone has improvements or comments about this, we can certainly improve it. But the idea is, I've illustrated, this is the syntax that does it. It's not very hard to do, so long as you have string split. I think it's SQL 2016 or above has string split. There's another one that's available at a lower version than 2016. But anyway, just to kind of illustrate that it works, I have a user dropdown filled with some usernames, and if I pick some and say display it, in the box here I'm displaying the user numbers, the user IDs that were picked out, but also you can see I've got a result that is coming out with the username, and we're iterating over the list. And so it's showing that this, whatever you pick out in this list, is being, we're able to use the selections and process them against SQL. So in that case, I picked out 3, and I got 3. So behind the scenes, and let's see, I've got it open here already. Behind the scenes, the selection is a very simple, just getting to load up the list. I'm getting the usernames and the user IDs of usernames that are in the Plant and App family. But in terms of using it, I have a create list from SQL that is using the technique. So we're string splitting the target IDs. The target IDs that I'm passing in is the variable or the token named usernames, and that actually contains that comma delimited list of user IDs. And so it gives us a list, and we start out with an empty result. We work through the user list, and every time there's a new user list item, we're adding to the result the username, first name, the last name. Again, nothing terribly complex about what we're doing here other than proving that it works. And then I'm using a display error message action to show both the value of usernames, but more importantly, the result, so that we can see that it's working. Is anyone using a technique like that? Yeah, I love it. Ben is adding, yeah, I verbally mentioned 2016 plus that's, but putting the warning here in the text is probably a good thing to do. So I'll go ahead and add that.
To answer your question, I use this technique all the time, but as you mentioned, we do use 2016, but I started doing this before 2016. So I never utilized the string split function. I use the built-in function with DNN because I know it's always going to exist and it works prior to 2016. So that's the method that I use. But yes, the same kind of idea where I take a string and I split it using that internal function.
So Ben, do you remember what the name of that built-in DNN function is?
Yes, it is convert string to table.
So Dale, since you're making a note, maybe there we go.
So it works with IntelliSense if you're pre-writing it in the SSMS. So if you type in dbo.convert, it'll pop up and you'll see it in there. It's a function that's auto created at the install time of .NET Nuke.
And I'm sorry, can you tell me that function again?
Convert string to table.
All run together like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you say use that function, what are you talking about? How do you use that function? Is that actually something that runs in SQL, or is that something
Yes,
that
it's a stored procedure in SQL.
stored procedure? Very good. So it's
a function. It's not a source. Excuse me. Yeah, it returns a table. So you give it a string. The first parameter is going, if I'm remembering correctly, the first parameter is the delimiter, and the second parameter is your actual string list. And then what it does is it returns to you a table with two columns. One is row number, the second is row value.
Right. For this purpose, I'll probably just go that far. But so the we have a note now at the bottom. And then for those who are interested in providing contributions, once you're part of the Campfire website, you can just come in, and I haven't added it yet as a contribution directly, so I thought I'd go ahead and wrap this up so that
another question. You said you got the string that you're splitting from doing a create list from SQL statement.
just a second. I'll
Sure.
been around me at all, you know that two things at once is not my specialty. All right, try again, Don. Tell me.
How did you get the list that you're splitting with the string split?
Yes, in this case, I happen to just be using a drop down of using the drop down to accomplish it. And so not this one, but rather this form has something called usernames. It's a drop down with checkboxes, so you can pick any one that you want. But I'm just selecting from the users table.
And the trick to build it into a list of items is as text and as value.
Correct. That's the clearest way to do it, and I believe that's hopefully it's explained down here.
It says when both the value and text properties are mapped. So yeah, that's
Yeah. So
that.
if, for example, I mean, there's other syntaxes that will work here. So for example, this would just show user IDs in the box, and that would also, I'm sorry, let's do this. You could just select if you only select one field out of the selection, it's going to display that, and so it's going to be both the text that you see and the value that's assigned to it. Or in the same way, this would be just the name. The name would be displayed, and that would be the value that's assigned to it when you select that item. But this syntax gives you the control over what the user sees versus what the value of that item is that's returned.
Got it. And the drop down field is what gives you the 1, 5, 8, et cetera, when you've selected those from the in the function.
Correct. And I'm just going to modify that just so that it displays all of them, not just limiting it to 5. But yes, the drop down with checkbox shows all the values, and depending on which ones you pick, visually you see those appear with a comma, but then in our display, I show the value of usernames as a token, and it's showing. It has the IDs that are associated with Patrick and Radu in this case.
Very cool.
And it puts the commas between them. You could use other tools for example, there's another drop-down tool that would be a single choice selection if you wanted just one, and that would work as well. But I was just trying to get an easy comma delimited list. Just curious now that we're into this. We talked about it. Taking a look at these two different functions and what they do. So string split, we go into SQL console and mock that up. 1, 2, 3, 4 gives us value with 4 different rows. It's and then using convert string to table, see if we can work through the syntax of that. And as Ben pointed out, you can use, if you did it in SQL Server Management Studio, it would be showing you the syntax. We're trying to guess a little bit at the syntax here. So we're going to do I think you said that the delimiter was first.
I believe so. I extended it. So it's the same function, and I know when I use it, it's delimiter first, and then the string followed.
Yeah, looks like it's not that one. So yeah, maybe we can go out to SQL Server Management Studio and find it here. If anybody has it faster than I can get there. Convert list table, says Matt. So let's try that before I go spending too much more time on it. So,
Oops. I'm not in front of my PC today, so that's why I'm trying to do this by memory.
there we go. So convert listed table is the right answer. And I'll do this visually and then put it in the notes so we don't send people in the wrong place. Convert list table returns that. So we could say, for example, so you could just get, for the purpose that we were trying to do, you would want to use just one. You don't want to return the row number and the row value. So let me get that into the contribution as well.
I pasted the the SQL generated script for the select statement in there if you want to add that into.
Thank you.
Interesting that they allow up to 5 characters for the delimiter. In the generated script, at least, it says it makes it an invar 5.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I extended it. I made a duplicate of that, and I made my own for 2 reasons. Number one, I extended the delimiter to be more than 5 characters in case it's like a full-on string you're splitting by.
Yeah.
The other thing too, if I remember correctly, the content that you can supply it is also limited. It's like a varchar 1000 or something like that. I made it a varchar max.
Yeah, in the SQL generated script, it is an invar max. So I assume that means that the function allows max now by default. Maybe they change that later.
Could be.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So just one more thing available in case you're trying to do that particular thing. So Campfire contributions. Again, I encourage you to, if you have something that would be useful to share with the community or just to make it easy to look it up and find it when you're trying to do it, I refer to this frequently. So that's that one. Someone else, something come to mind? We had there's a support one going on right now that disconnect. We don't need this. Back on the idea of being able to create a copy of an entity by exporting it and then importing it after making some manual changes to the JSON. And it occurs to me that I know we talked about that in Campfire in the past, but it occurs to me that it is a complex and fraught process if you don't do it right. And so and we have a support call going on right now. So the idea is that if we have an employment an app question entity and you wanted to create another version of app question, it is possible to export that. But let's go back to the to the beginning. The intention of the way that when PlantinApp provided the export capability is to be able to take this and bring it to a different system and import it. So that if you have a development system and a production system and you want to have the exact same entity on the production system, you can copy and export from one, paste it or import it into the other, and now you'll have a duplicate. But we pointed out that it is possible to use the export, and if you were to change the exported text quite a bit, you could make a copy of that same item and then import it back in, and you'd have a copy. When I say making significant changes, the changes that are important are that when you import it back in, it has to have its own global ID. You can make one up. These are values between 0 and 9 and A through is it F, I think. And so you can just change one character of a global ID and come up with a new global ID, or you can use SQL to generate a GUID for you. But you would need to have its own global ID. You would need to have its own namespace. Excuse me, the namespace GUID would need to match something that's already on your system. So that needs to be left alone. There are new ones and actually I'm going to bring it up because it's slightly different. There's another one that's present now in this, and so it's important to know that and know about it and know what to do with it or not. So at version 125, they've adjusted this export format a little bit, added more information. So I want you to be aware of that. So in the export of, for example, book, it's not this one. Anyway, I'll find it. But the important thing to note is that when you're doing it to copy, the IDs have to be right, and you can get yourself into a circumstance that's difficult because
each property has a GUID also?
Each property has a GUID, and it needs to be completely different. I think I know you can change them and get to that spot, so you make up your own unique one, or it may also be that you remove the GUID and it works. But I would recommend doing this with care, meaning if you need to do that, it should at the very least be backed up before you do it, and to do it with care, because there's a new parameter. I don't want to say the name out loud because it has to do with the config files. But the idea is this, that when you create an entity, we create actions that go with those entities, and those actions, meaning the ability to read all from your entity or partially update your entity, and those actions have a GUID as part of their naming structure. And they're tied very closely to the entity that they come from. So where you can get yourself into trouble is that if you use this method to create a copy of an entity, which is a very valid thing to want to do. You've got an entity and you want to have, it's got 100 fields and you don't want to have to type them all, right? But if you don't change that configuration ID, you can end the actions that get generated are now pointing to your original table and not to the table that you've the new entity that you're creating, and so that creates much confusion. So if you don't know exactly what you're doing in there, recommend that you test carefully or contact support for some help.
I thought we had a feature request for cloning an entity, but I looked on in our internal system and on the community, and I didn't see it.
There's a related work in progress right now. The ability that when you import, import an entity, that it overwrites the existing entity. The idea is that if you have an entity on your development server and the same entity has been imported to your production server, which is the intended function, then it's going to be a very normal thing to want to change your development entity to include a few more properties, and then you want those same things to be brought into your production environment. Right now, if you try to export from development and re-import that into production, it will fail with an error message. Instead, it should detect, hey, it's the same name, it's the same GUIDs, we just need to add a few things here and import it, and it will work as expected. So for its intended purpose, we're improving it to be better at its intended purpose. Right now, it's a one-time transfer. We want to make it the ability to transfer it as often as you need to make them match. But for the cloning of an entity, that's probably a better way to put it. We don't have support for that. We can trick that mechanism into doing a clone, but it's not the intended purpose. And you got to be careful with it.
So Patrick, are you saying we need a feature request in there?
Yeah, because we talked about that on Campfire a while back about you know, because we brought this question forward and we talked about it for a while, and I think we said that we should have a feature request, or and I thought maybe we did, but I just searched and I didn't find it. So yeah, if somebody wants to put in a feature request for cloning an entity, I think it's a good you know, I think I understand the it gets complicated though, because beyond just the entity, because then are you connecting to the same children entity when you clone your entity, or are you you know, or do you want to clone those first and then decide which ones you connect to? So there's a whole lot to consider, I think, in the cloning of an entity. So I'm not sure how easy it would be to implement.
It's really easy in the feature request.
Yeah.
You know, having that export button there, it kind of implies that you're going to be able to import it as you need. I think it's kind of it's a communication issue that you're saying that it was there for an intended purpose, and it would be probably helpful to the user to see what the intended purpose was.
And I understand that, because that's kind of like a that's an expected flow from other parts of the
Sure.
application, because there's other parts of the application where we do just that. We export something and then we import it directly back into the same place, and you can do that. And here you can't. So
This here it means something else.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm typing the feature request unless somebody else is ahead of me.
Good deal.
Okay.
So this is the new parameter that we're seeing in late versions of 1.25 that has the config generation global ID. And you'll notice that the config generation global ID is the exact same thing as the global ID. So where you get into trouble, and actually this wasn't present when we talked about it before, so it would not be, it's not surprising that it would cause problems if you had gotten into this. But this is saying that the actions that we're generating are going to be created with the same ID as the table. So if you wanted to export and import, and you're trying to fake out, do it through what we've provided, these two would need to match. So you'd make a change to this one, make the same change to that one. This one is going to be, you need to keep it. This one needs to be different. I mean, it's fraught. And I'd be happy to demonstrate if anyone cared, but I don't want to go down that path if no one cares.
Like that could use a form as an intermediary, where you're choosing what needs to be. You're indicating your intention. Like, I intend to copy this right here in the same application.
Yeah.
And it could prompt you to change this and that.
Yep.
A wizard.
Okay. And then the if I didn't say it, the warning is that if you do it and you don't do it right, and it does ugly things, it's also hard to unwind, because I'm concerned that those things are not, if you try and delete things, whether or undo them, they can be pointing to the wrong things and have yet more unintended consequences. So
it's almost like, just to continue the discussion a little bit, it's almost like there's like 3 different scenarios that could happen. And what you were saying, Mark, I think that it's that you could add a form, a prompt could ask this: do you intend to create a new entity in this application? Do you intend to create a new entity in another application, or do you intend to overwrite this same entity in another application? So yeah, those are the 3 different scenarios you would have, and what you'd want the import to do would be different in all 3.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, Patrick. And in fact, I was thinking, is this something that could be done as a campfire contribution sort of thing?
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of if it was an improvement to the application, which of course I'm expecting that Jim is capturing all these notes and putting it into the feature request that he's writing up.
Of course it is.
to your point, Matt, while it's possible for somebody to write this as a campfire contribution, I'd be concerned that the developers are going to change this along the way and at will in order to accomplish what needs to do for the product. So a contribution would be version specific.
Agreed.
I mean, the point here with the with that new key that wasn't present, what is it here? This config generation global ID wasn't present 1 version ago. Did you guys lose me by any chance?
Nope.
We see you.
Yeah, I'm hearing my power kick in, so hopefully we didn't lose internet. Okay. Then what else do we have?
I don't know if you saw that, Dale, or not, but Mark sent us a suggestion for a topic discussion. Mark, do you want to?
Sure.
Do you want to bring that forward, or?
Sure. Yeah. I thought when we have a room full of smart people listening, that would be a great time to bring up a complicated question. So I've got a situation where I'm building a progressive web app, which means that the browser buttons of forward and back will not be present on the screen, the built-in ones. So I am required to make my own. And so that is the question. How do I record a path that a user is taking through the application from page to page as they go, such that when they click my homemade back button, it steps back 1 step from where they came from, and then maybe a second and a third and a 4th step. And the additional requirement would be the session variables that were called when or the query string parameters that were present when they visited each of these pages should then be present again when they go back and then forward. So any insight on how to develop that kind of system where it's keeping track of that and pulling it back out?
Ben's hand is.
Yeah. Don, I see your suggestion there with the JavaScript history. Do you think, I
That's
don't
what,
know. I know I can go back one and it would do all those things. I don't know if I could keep calling JavaScript to go back and back and back, and it would do the query string parameters and such. Does anybody know?
Yep, I've done something I think that pretty much is exactly what you're looking for. I don't get rid of the back buttons. I haven't done a progressive web app, but I've had a situation where I needed to be able to jump to another form and that form have a return button. And that return button has to go back to its parent calling form, potentially with all of the query string parameters that were on the original form. So I created a combination of things. There's a table that I call return URL, and then I have a token, two tokens. One is create a return URL, and the other one is go back. And what it does is it basically takes that URL of the form that you're currently on, stores it into the table, and generates a GUID. That GUID you pass as a return URL ID to the other form. That other form, when you need it to go back, takes that GUID, pulls out the record that's associated to it in the table, which has the entire URL of where to go to, and then just goes back to that page. And then there's extra stuff that I put in that token. So the create URL token has the ability to ignore certain parameters. There's a skip parameters. So if you give it a comma delimited list of parameter names that you know are going to be in there that you don't want, for example, if the page happens to have an action grid on it and you have it synced to URL, and it's got, the grid's page number and page size and all that, and you want to ignore those things, you can. You could put those in the skip parameters, so it won't embed those in the URL when it generates that GUID. And there's other things. And then when you do the go back, it's go back and you give it the GUID. And that token will go into the table, pull out the URL, and then do your redirect as you want.
Right. As you were describing that, I'm remembering that I think that we've discussed this before. And so I appreciate hearing your method again. That sounds really good. That's a very smart back button. You're telling it how much, when you go back, how much you want to include and how much you don't. Or in your case, you even said, I want them to go back 2 steps if they're going to go back. Sometimes.
The create URL, the token that I created does 2 things. If you don't supply it any parameters, it will assume what you want to create it on is the current URL page you are on with all of its query string parameters. Otherwise, you can supply it the URL that you want it to go back to. So if it's a different page than the one you're on that you want whatever page you're going to return to, then you supply that as the URL parameter to that create. It'll embed that URL instead. So you can build your own custom URL at the fly and do that. But otherwise, if you just say create URL ID, it's just going to take the current URL, generate a GUID, and spit that back to you.
Okay,
so I don't know, but it sounds like that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it is. I think I would choose to complicate the matters a little bit by trying to convert from using query string parameters into things that are less visible, so session variable or other things. So,
well, that's one of the reasons why I use the GUID instead. Well, actually, there's 2 reasons. Number one, it completely obfuscates the data. So a GUID is pointless, and the chances of someone being able to guess a GUID is near nil. The other thing too is that sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, the URL itself has a limitation of 2,000 characters. So if you embed like another URL as a return address, and that return address is extremely long, and the page that you're on also has an extremely long address, there's a chance you could potentially get to that limit. Embedding the whole entire thing into a GUID, you get a 36 character string that could represent as much data as you want it to represent.
so then as a user is going through your app, they're always seeing a GUID at the end of their
Yeah,
query
it just
string.
says return URL ID, and then you know, alphanumeric string, which means absolutely nothing to them. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. I can work with that. Was there a, thank you, Ben, for that. Was there an alternate idea from anyone? Not that Ben's isn't good. I just want to give someone a chance to say what they wanted. All right, then I'm going to consider this question answered. Thank you, Ben.
No problem. If you want, I can share with you the code to generate all that offline.
Okay, great.
Somewhere along the line, your progressive web app, if it's appropriate to demonstrate it, I would love to see. I think it'd be an interesting topic for Campfire. Right? I think we've had some do that in the past. But
Well,
anyway.
I've been threatening to have a completed progressive web app for a couple of years now. So when it's done, and I think that it'll be relatively soon, then I will be happy to show off and show and tell.
Be good. I was going to throw out a topic. I recently opened up an app that I was working on, a Plankton app website, and found, to my surprise, that I could do almost everything on a tablet now. A long time ago, I tried to do stuff on a tablet and couldn't, because of DNN and the trying to get to a form into edit mode or a grid into edit mode, that I couldn't do what I needed to do. And now between Page Builder and maybe some other techniques to be able to get into those design elements, I was able to open it up, and then almost everything works within being able to open and edit and make changes to a form. The only thing that I found, there are some cases where drag and dropping actions around in a stack that I couldn't change the order of actions. Anybody else try to use a tablet lately?
I was curious, what operating system and browser is your tablet that you're using?
Well, it's an Amazon Fire, so what is that?
Oh, really? Okay, wow.
And I was using their browser.
So Amazon Fire is a
subset of
Android based, yeah.
Yeah, and then they have their own.
And their own, yeah, what's that called again? I forget. But yeah, they have
Silk.
their own browser. Silk, that's it, yep.
But and in that configuration, as I say, in some cases, I think if I have it right, when you opened a grid and you had the data layout, that you could change the order of columns on a grid, drag and drop worked in that instance, but in actions in an action stack, you couldn't reorder the action, so that was a little annoying. But it feels like we're very close, and anyway, I was pleasantly surprised. I like being able to just open up I have some cases where if you want to do something on the fly, or you're just sitting in front of the television at night and wanting to make a few changes, don't want to haul out the laptop, it's very nice to be able to do some things like that. Just wonder if anybody else has tried it.
I have tried this sort of thing from time to time, and I would agree that it is getting better. We can do more. If you can avoid the persona bar and the page edit bar down at the bottom of DNN, if you can avoid those things, you're better off.
Yep. And I was going to see if I can take a look here. So we are, and I don't know if this is the right site or not. We'll find out here in just a second. Yeah, so with our new, with Page Builder, we're now doing a better job at revealing these, which you can, so if you're imagining this on a tablet, it's kind of hard to right click, but excuse me, to be able to get into Page Builder, if you're using Page Builder and you can click and open a form for edit. That's one. And then I've gotten to, in one particular application that I wrote, I have found it to be useful. I'm not using Page Builder in all instances, and what I've done is put in root buttons on everything in listings, or just a button on form that says edit, and assign that to only show for the administrator has role admins. And so there's just a button on screen that opens up the edit in a new view. And that was for my convenience in desktop development. But when it turns to tablet development, it's like even better. Again, your point, you're not messing with persona bar or the edit elements. Anyway, I will probably make a list of the things where we're short on tablet development, like the drag and drop, and add it to my own feature request. I don't know where it'll come in the list. My feature requests don't get put any higher than your feature requests on the list, but we can all contribute our opinions, right? Cool. This is almost up, sir.
Speaking of feature requests, Jim, is that feature request ready? We can go vote on it.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I am typing as we speak, but I'm a
Okay.
slow typist when it comes to
That's
this.
all right. We don't want to rush perfection there.
Writing a novel?
Is it ready yet or not? You're still working on
Still
we there
working
yet?
on
Are we
Okay.
there yet?
it. Okay. I guess I can edit after submit, right?
I don't know.
All right. Well, here
You
I'll just
can't edit
submit.
the original thing. You can just
Okay.
add.
It's out there now.
Right, and just as a reminder, you can click into it. We have these handy dandy upvote. Y'all know where it is. You're already up to 3. Okay. I was gonna bounce off of this group, and it's with 6 minutes left. I don't know how much we'll get into it, but maybe we can start thinking about it. Our product team has been strongly considering adding a health check into the application in the next for version 127, or probably 127. And the idea is kind of multifold, that we make a lot of decisions trying to figure out how to change our application to better support what you are doing. And a lot of times we don't know. I mean, we have the application does, as you know, hundreds, thousands of things, hundreds of actions, different behaviors, and we don't know exactly what's in use, how people use it, and then but we're trying to make decisions about how to do that. So our thought was that obviously we don't want any personally identifiable information, but if we had what actions, some meta information about how your application was being used, how our application was being used in your environment. So what kinds of actions, general configurations, again, meta information, then it would give us better decision-making capability. And then the other piece to that is that we could we could use that to check the health of your setup as well. So a variety of things. I should have brought this up. So to do things like obsolete actions, or consistency, illegal custom coding. But if you've used something that's that should have been a reserved word and we didn't enforce a reserved word, we get better at these things over time. Looking for repeated errors. I'm just wondering your thoughts in general about if we were to provide a health check and the ability for you to browse to a screen within configuration and to see advice from us under those kinds of conditions, what your reaction to that would be.
When you say advice from us, do you mean that there's going to be real live human beings giving advice, or?
No, advice in terms of like you've used this obsolete action 73 times and here's where. So knowing, for example, that upgrade to 126 is going to fail because of this condition, but not personal, but rather just we're looking at your meta information and saying this is of concern.
I have a
quote that if that was a feature request, I'd give it a thumbs up.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would
said
say
it
the
was
same,
important to me.
with the little caveat that it seems like it could be construed as a little bit big brotherish, or like we're giving away information about our applications if we press that button. So if there were a way to run it without, with the checkbox that says don't share this with plant and app, that would be allow us to protect our intellectual property, possibly.
Absolutely, there was. I mean, that intellectual property is part of the discussion, and that's why I phrased it as meta information. So it's trying to walk that line between acquiring enough information to be able to provide you insight without revealing intellectual property.
It's funny. I don't think that anything that I'm doing, I'm doing it smarter than anyone else, and I should need to protect it. But at the same time, it's just a general overarching thought to not let everyone see everything you're doing all the time. It leaves the door open for bad actors somewhere along the line.
Yep.
I'd say I don't have any problem with it, similar to Mark, as long as the code that's being run that does the analysis is running locally on the system and nothing's being transmitted outward. If it's all internal to the system, I wouldn't have any issue with that because it's retaining all the data locally.
But the metadata would be okay, right?
Well, if it's running locally, it doesn't even matter whether it's metadata or not, and nothing's being transmitted. It's just code that is analyzing your site and spitting back suggestions of, we found the following potential issues. And that's it. It's just a subroutine, running, analyze your website, spits you back a report, and that's it. It doesn't get transmitted anywhere. It doesn't get stored anywhere. So at that point, if that's the way it's intended to work, I don't have a problem with that. But the moment, we start delving into the realm of, well, metadata gets transferred back to home base of Plantain app, we have systems here that will analyze it and spit back results, then that's where it becomes tricky.
Well, I think Dale was suggesting there was going to be a component of that metadata coming back so they can learn.
That's certainly under discussion.
Yeah.
And
so somehow you're going to have to walk that balance rope between and make us, not us, but your users comfortable with what's going back.
Well, if you make the submit metadata, A, clear what's getting submitted, and then B, an option that the user, one of us would say, yeah, go ahead. That would be
A decision
maybe
point.
cross that bridge.
Yes, this was definitely, and I didn't explicitly say this, but this was an opt-in scenario. So there was never any discussion about just doing something and building it into the product that you didn't have a choice. It was going to be opt-in. But good. All right. Well, that's initial impressions. We've hit the top of our hour, so it's a great time to break off into our afterglow segment. So if you have a minute, stick around. Otherwise, this has been a great 2023 of Low Code Campfire, and we'll see you again in the new year. Thanks all.